He had always thought strength came from action, from lifting things, fixing things, solving things. But as the years stretched, he learned something quieter. Strength wasn't always about what you did. Sometimes it was about what you noticed, the small things, the subtle shifts, the quiet whispers your body makes when something isn't right. He remembered walking up the stairs used to be easy. Now, it took a pause halfway. He never complained. It was just part of getting older, he told himself. But deep inside, something told him it's not just about age, it's about what he wasn't seeing. There's a comfort in routine. Waking up, making tea, feeding the dog, reading the paper. Routines cradle us in predictability. But when the routine starts to include tiredness, breathlessness, or forgetting why you entered a room, then the familiar can quietly turn into the dangerous. Most people ignore it. They shrug it off. I didn't sleep well. It's just a cold. Must be the weather. But the truth is, not everything passes on its own. Sometimes what feels small is the start of something big. His neighbor George used to walk every morning. Rain or shine, he'd wave through the hedge, always whistling. Then one day he stopped. Just taking it easy, George said. Then a week later, he was gone. His daughter said he just went in his sleep. Peaceful, unexpected. The truth, he hadn't been feeling right for weeks. But he didn't want to cause a fuss, didn't want to waste anyone's time. That's how many stories end with silence. It's not always about emergencies. It's about the slow, creeping change that goes unnoticed because it doesn't shout. It whispers. A little more tired than usual. A shorter walk. A skipped meal. A nap that lasts too long. A loss of appetite. They don't seem important on their own, but together they paint a picture we often refuse to look at. There's a strange thing about aging. Your body gets quieter, but the risks get louder. You start to realize that care is not just about medications and appointments. It's about being aware, about listening. He remembered a moment clearly. He was standing in the kitchen, holding a glass of water, and suddenly he felt off. Not dizzy, not in pain, just off, like something inside had dimmed slightly. He sat down, waited, took a few deep breaths. Eventually it passed. He told no one. It happened again. A week later, same feeling, same silence. Then it didn't pass. He called his daughter. She came over, took one look at him and said, "We're going to the clinic." That visit saved his life. Looking back, he was amazed at how easy it had been to dismiss his own warning signs. If it had been someone else, a friend, his wife, his child, he would have insisted they get help. But for himself, he hesitated. Why? Because admitting something might be wrong feels like surrender. Because being older means you already feel like a burden. Because no one wants to feel fragile. But vulnerability isn't weakness. It's awareness. And that awareness can be the difference between being here and being remembered. He began keeping a journal. Nothing fancy. Just notes about how he felt each morning. Any pain? Any strange feelings? His daughter called it his early warning radar. Some days were great, others not so much, but writing it down helped him see the patterns. He noticed the days he forgot to drink enough water. He felt more tired. He realized when he skipped his evening walk, he slept poorly. He saw that after eating too late, his chest felt tight the next morning. Tiny things, but they added up. That's the thing about health. It's never just one big decision. It's hundreds of small ones. Quiet choices made over time. He changed slowly. Started with water, then evening walks. Switched heavy meals for lighter ones. Started checking his blood pressure once a week. Nothing dramatic, but steady over months. He felt different. Not younger, not invincible, just more alive. He told his friends, but most shrugged it off. You're lucky, they said, but luck had little to do with it. It was listening when his body whispered instead of waiting for it to scream. He wasn't perfect. There were still days he forgot, days he stayed up too late watching old war documentaries, but those days didn't define him. The days he showed up for himself did. He began encouraging others. At the community center, he'd ask the men at his card table, "How are you really feeling?" At first, They laughed. Then one admitted his feet had been swelling. Another said he'd been getting dizzy standing up. No one had brought it up before. But now they were talking, and in that conversation was power. Awareness isn't medicine, but sometimes it's the best medicine we have. Awareness leads to questions. Questions lead to answers. And answers lead to action. He started saying something to himself every morning. I choose today, not just to survive, but to pay attention. He chose to stretch, even when stiff. He chose to take a breath before reacting. He chose to eat better, even when tempted. He chose to talk, even when quiet felt easier. He chose to check in with himself and with others, not because he feared the end, but because he honored the middle. Life in these years is not about counting what's lost. It's about cherishing what remains and protecting it with everything you've got. He remembered his father never talked about how he felt. Stoic, silent, until the day his knees gave out in the garden and he never walked again. He wondered what might have changed if his father had simply said, "Something feels wrong." It's not dramatic, it's not flashy, but it could have changed everything. Now he was the one setting a different example, not just for his children, but for his grandchildren, for the neighbor down the street, for the quiet man who sits on the same park bench every afternoon. He smiled more. He moved more. He noticed more. The world didn't get slower. He just started moving at a pace where he could see it better. He laughed often now, not because life was easier, but because he had learned to take joy in the ordinary. A morning with no chest tightness, joy. A day without fatigue, joy. A moment of clarity, joy. Joy had never been so simple or so valuable. And when people asked him what he had changed, he always said the same thing. I started taking myself seriously, not just as an old man, but as someone who still had more to do, more to give, more to feel. And the first step, he listened. When his body spoke, when his breath changed, when his energy dipped, he listened. And in that listening, he found life again. There was a rhythm to it now. Sunlight drifting across the wooden floor, the scent of tea cooling in his favorite cup, the quiet hum of a world beginning again. This was peace. But beneath that peace lived something else, something he hadn't named. Not yet. He had never been the worrying type. Even in his youth, when bills piled up and the kids were crying and the car wouldn't start, he kept going. He was built for it. But now, things were different. Now, it wasn't about what he could fix with his hands. It was about what he couldn't see. He noticed at first when he stood up too quickly. A brief, dizzy wave, not unusual, he told himself. But then it happened again and again. He told no one. After all, what was he supposed to say? That he felt ... off. That the walk to the mailbox left him more tired than usual. That he didn't finish his lunch not because he wasn't hungry, but because something inside just didn't feel right. The world didn't seem to notice. People smiled at him in the store. His daughter called to check in, but no one asked the question he was too proud to answer. Are you okay? And maybe, just maybe, he wasn't. Not in a big, dramatic way, but in the quiet, creeping sort of way that slowly eats at your days until you don't recognize them. There's a kind of stillness that comes with age. The world doesn't run around you the way it once did, but stillness shouldn't mean silence. He began paying attention to the heaviness in his arms when folding laundry, to the way he had to pause at the top of the stairs, to the strange pressure in his chest that came and went like a passing thought. He knew his body, knew its rhythms, its complaints, its victories. But this was different. This wasn't just aging. It felt like something else. And yet, he said nothing. Why? Because saying something makes it real. Because when you've lived a whole life being strong, it's hard to admit when something feels weak. But the body doesn't care about pride. It cares about being heard. He remembered a friend Doan, tall, loud, a real character, always joking, always brushing things off. Don had the same symptoms. He'd mention them over cards. This heartburn's killing me. He'd laugh. Only it wasn't heartburn. It was the last warning he ever got. No one laughed at the funeral. No one joked about just getting old. The silence after Don's passing was heavier than any of his punchlines. It made him think he didn't want to vanish like that, to be here one day, gone the next, and everyone looking back wondering why he never said anything. So he started making small changes. He began writing down how he felt. At first, just in the mornings. Then, in the evenings, too. He wasn't a writer, but the notes helped. Tired, lightheaded, slept poorly. Chest pressure lasted 5 minutes after breakfast. Good day. Took a walk, felt fine. It didn't seem like much, but over weeks, the pattern became clear. The warnings weren't sudden, they were scattered, like puzzle pieces he hadn't put together until he did. And once he saw the picture, he knew it was time. He made the appointment. The receptionist said, "We haven't seen you in a while." He just nodded. The checkup was simple, routine, but the doctor asked him questions no one else had. Not even his family. Do you feel short of breath when you climb stairs? Yes. Any tightness in your chest? Sometimes. Do you feel more tired than usual lately? Yes. And with every yes, the weight in his chest grew. Not fear, clarity. The truth was finally on the table. And strangely, that truth was a relief. He wasn't imagining it. He wasn't just getting older. Something was happening. And now, finally, something could be done about it. He followed the doctor's advice, ran tests, changed some habits, cut back on salt, walked a bit more each day, took the pills even when he didn't want to. But most importantly, he started telling people, his daughter, his neighbors, his friends at the center. He told them, don't ignore it, even if it seems small. And they listened. Some got checked themselves. Others changed their diet. One man even called him weeks later and said, "You saved my life." You know, he didn't feel like a hero. He just felt lucky to still be around to tell his story. The truth is, the body doesn't betray you all at once. It warns you, whispers, nudges, sends signals. But we're trained not to listen. We downplay discomfort. We call it indigestion. Blame it on stress. Say it's nothing. But sometimes nothing is everything. He thought about how many people were walking around just like he had been, carrying silent warnings. They were too proud or too scared to mention people who still had time, if they only knew. And so he kept speaking. He gave small talks at the senior center, wrote letters to his grandkids, telling them to always listen to their bodies. He kept a list taped to the fridge, a list that read, "Drink more water, rest. But don't sit all day. Pay attention to your breath. Don't ignore tightness or pressure. Ask for help. Talk to someone. You matter. Because you do. Because aging isn't an ending. It's a new chapter. And chapters deserve care." He once feared becoming that old man who worries too much. Now, he was proud of it because worrying saved his life and might save others too. He still sits by the window each morning. Same tea, same sunlight, same quiet hum of the world. But now he feels different, stronger, calmer, wiser, because he listens, because he took action, because he's still here. And while he doesn't have all the answers, he has this one truth. When your body's